Council members, if you could take your seat, we're about to begin in a few minutes, actually in a few seconds. Council members, blink if you hear me. Thank you. I'm remembering things today. Welcome. Before we start the meeting, I have a couple quick public service announcements. For an emergency, please note the exits on either side of the chambers and proceed down the stairs. Bathrooms are located out the door to my left, women's room to the right, men's room to the left. We allow 30 minutes for public speaking. If you have not done so, please sign up at the podium. Zoom speakers are only permitted if you signed up by emailing the city clerk by 11 a.m. today. If you did sign up, you must put your camera on so that we could see you before addressing the council. Please note that the council has rules of decorum for our meetings, including the public speaking portion. We ask that respect be shown to all, whether they serve on the council, on the staff, or are here as public members. As noted on the signage, we do not allow weapons of any sort, signs mounted on wood, metal, or similar material, or signs larger than 19 by 24. This will help guarantee that we follow the open meeting law, so please don't lift those signs above your head to block the view. Not only are we here tonight to listen to the voices of the public, but we are also here to run government proceedings. To best serve us all, we cannot have any distractions. When a speaker is addressing the council, no disruptions are permitted. This includes talking over, yelling, and clapping. When this body proceeds with the day's business, we also need no disruptions. As per open meeting law, section 103, interruption of a speaker or government proceedings will not be tolerated. After one warning, anyone interrupting a speaker or the proceedings of tonight's meeting will be removed from chambers. I am now calling this Common Council meeting to order at 7:42 p.m. on April 1st, 2025. If you are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. May I please have roll call?
Alderman Pasty,
Here.
Alderman Tierney,
Here.
Alderman Scott Childress, Alderman Edwards,
Excused.
Alderman Mickens,
Here.
Alderman Dennison,
Here.
Alderman Andrews, Alderman Shabbat,
Here.
Alderman Hirsch.
We have a quorum. Can I have a motion to dispense with the minutes of the
Motion.
previous meeting and approve same? Motion by Steve Shabbat, second by Rennie Scott Childress. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is adopted 8-0. Can I have a motion to dispense with the reading of the general bills? Motion by Michelle
Second.
Hirsch, second by Steve Shabbat. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is adopted 8-0. We now enter into the public speaking portion of the meeting. We have allotted 30 minutes for this purpose. Speakers will have 3 minutes. Please be aware that I will give a verbal 30-second warning. If there are remaining speakers after 30 minutes, I will call for a motion from the council to extend the period for another 30 minutes. Speakers, direct your comments to the chair, as council members cannot engage in debate during this time. Please state your name and address on the record before you begin. There could be no distractions from the audience in chambers or on Zoom when a speaker addresses the council. The Common Council has also received written comments for our consideration, and they could be found on the city's website under tonight's agenda. May I have the first speaker, please?
Michelle Elise,
30 seconds. Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. Thank you. Your time is up. Thanks. Next speaker, please.
Teddy Archswager.
Good evening. My name is Teddy Archwager. I'm reading this comment on behalf of Assemblymember Sarahana Shrestha, who could not be here today because she's in Albany for the ongoing state budget negotiations. In 1968, New York created a public corporation that built 33,000 high-quality homes in 5 years, and the legacy of these homes lives on to this day. Decades later, as the state's politics took a friendlier turn towards businesses over public needs, it's become abundantly clear that no matter how high the demand and how big the tax breaks, private developers are simply not capable of getting us the affordable homes we need. In fact, we heard a few months ago at a Kingston Common Council hearing that requiring some units to be affordable enough is believed to disincentivize private development, proving that putting all our chips on private development is foolish. It is time for New York to revisit its short-lived history of bold public investments and establish the Green Social Housing State Authority and use 100% union labor to build high-quality and permanently affordable homes. Homes that are designed to be places where families flourish, not properties that make landlords profits. In the meantime, we must also urgently stabilize the rent of existing homes so that rents are set by reasons rather than by the whims of landlords. To that end, we must pass the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act so that upstate localities can more easily declare a housing emergency and exercise more control over how they'd like to opt in to the state's rent stabilization laws. I commend the Common Council's leadership on these matters and urge you to pass a resolution in favor of both the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act and the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Howard Weiss.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. My name is Howard Weiss. I live at 53 Brewster Street. I've been a volunteer with For the Many's tenant hotline for more than 2 years now. I am here to urge you to support resolutions for the REST Act, the Social Housing Development Authority, and to cancel this year's scheduled vacancy study. Here's why. Imagine that you have $300 in the bank, live paycheck to paycheck, and your landlord tells you your rent will be increasing 20% to keep up with market prices. If you are not protected by good cause eviction or rent stabilization, what would you do? Good luck finding an affordable apartment to move to. Think about it. If this happened to you or someone you love, part of your family, a neighbor, what would you do? And this is just one of many predicaments faced by huge numbers of tenants. Tenants are in dire need of expanded protections. They cannot and should not bear the primary burden if their landlords are not making enough money. So please help our neighbors and neighborhoods pass the resolution in support of the REST Act and the Social Housing Development Authority and cancel the vacancy study. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Jasmine Atala.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Atala and I live in Ward 8. Everyone in this room is aware that there's an extreme shortage of affordable homes in Kingston. Countless articles have been written about the nationwide housing crisis, and Kingston almost always makes the top of those lists. Obviously, the current approach to housing isn't working for the local working class. The introduction of the resolutions to pass the permanently affordable social housing for New Yorkers and the REST Act has me excited about Kingston's future for the first time in a while. It gives me hope that maybe the hundreds of local families being housed in motels due to unaffordable rents could have somewhere permanently affordable to live. It gives me hope that with social housing, I could go back to living in a city where you don't have to be wealthy to be my neighbor. Needless to say, I fully support these resolutions, and I hope the council will do right by our community by giving them your support as well. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Kieran. And I'll need you to say your last name, please.
The tricky one. My name is Kieran Kowalix, and I'm a tenant at 29 Warren Street in the city of Kingston. I urge the Common Council to pass resolutions in support of the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act and the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act. In addition to being a tenant, I'm a social worker who has been part of a homeless outreach team in Ulster County for the past year. I am on the front lines of the housing crisis every day, bearing witness to the trauma, anxiety, and desperation that people experience when they don't know if they'll have a safe place to sleep on any given night. All of my clients have unique needs, backgrounds, and stories. However, there is one factor that unites them all. Not a single one of them has enough money to afford the skyrocketing costs of housing in Kingston, in Ulster County, and across the state of New York. We don't need a vacancy study to tell us that this is a real and urgent crisis. I have elderly clients on fixed incomes who have lived in Kingston for their entire lives and are finding themselves without a roof over their heads for the first time at 70 or 80 years old. I have clients whose young children have never known a home other than the four walls of a motel room. This is a crisis that cannot be solved by the private sector, where landlords can charge $1,500 for a single bedroom with the expectation that the tenant will assist with yard work and snow removal. That was a real listing that I saw online. And minimum income and where existing affordable housing complexes have years-long wait lists and minimum income requirements that many of my clients will never meet. We need to keep the housing Kingston already has affordable by strengthening rent stabilization. And we need to create new, high-quality, permanently affordable homes that will provide dignity and stability to all of our neighbors, regardless of their life circumstances. Please pass resolutions supporting the PASHNI and REST Acts to keep everyone who calls this city home here in Kingston.
Next speaker, please.
Phil Erner.
Greetings. Please pass a resolution in support of the REST Act, as we've heard, as well as creating the Social Housing Development Authority. The REST Act would also eliminate the need to conduct a vacancy study for municipalities considering opting into ETPA. So I would urge you to cancel the plan to redo the vacancy study that you've got. Hopefully the state will pass the REST Act and no one will have to do that exact kind of study again. In the meantime, though, we could study the vacant houses throughout the city. Last I heard from the Poor People's Campaign nationwide, there are 6 vacant homes for every unhoused individual in this country. I also am here to support Resolution 63 to lower the speed limit on Wirt Street, on the bridge to the town of Esopus. We still need justice for Gary White, killed by a motorist on Broadway crossing the street in front of his home. His family and Safe Pass Ulster have outlined some ideas to continue to address the traffic violence crisis that we have here in Kingston. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Brandon Estenis.
Nailed it. Hi, I'm Brandon Dennis. I'm a resident here in Kingston, over here on Jansen. and I am an economist, and I devote a lot of my work to the study of the housing affordability crisis. I probably don't need to convince you all that there is, in fact, a housing affordability crisis. For a little bit of like historical perspective, we know right now the proportion of renters who are rent burdened is upwards of 50%, somewhere around 53% of people spending more than 30% of their incomes on rent. In 1970, that number was about 23%. So there's something very dramatic that's happened in the past decades, and it's related to a collapse of the housing supply. We haven't been building enough houses for about 40 or 50 years, and that's for a number of reasons. But importantly, there is no regulatory magic bullet that will cause the private sector to suddenly be able to build a sufficient amount of housing. We've been facing this problem for 50 years. We've been trying things for 50 years. What's needed is both public and private participation in development. It's essential to have both of these kinds of actors in order to build all the affordable housing that we need. And so I urge you to pass a resolution in support of the creation of the Social Housing Development Authority. And I also urge you to pass a resolution in support of the REST Act. The vacancy data is public. There's public vacancy data. It's very silly that we have to do these special studies. The act is, I think, kind of a no-brainer. I hope you'll support that and cancel the planned vacancy study. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker, please.
Michelangelo Pomerico.
Got it. Hello, my name is Michelangelo Pomerico. I live at 19 Furnace Street in Ward 4. I paid my rent today. It's my least favorite day of the month. I pay way too much. I'm very privileged. I know a lot of my neighbors are struggling more than I am to make ends meet and afford a basic quality of life. We're living in a really scary political moment, a time where the federal government is coming after our rights and the programs that are the foundation of the social safety net. And we really need to be doing everything we can to protect working people. And I'll remind you that the trust of working people is incredibly fragile. The current political moment is a testament to the distrust people have in their government. And so I encourage you to follow the leadership of Assemblymember Shrestha, who I personally worked very hard to elect and who has been incredible in serving and leading in the state of New York, as well as Council Members Tierney and Hirsch in supporting the resolutions before you in regards to permanently affordable housing, social housing, and the REST Act. And I am also incredibly against the idea of doing another vacancy study. We live in a housing emergency every day. We do not need to study this. We need to just continue to do what we can to protect working people and people that are struggling day to day. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Jackie Slack.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Slack. I am a tenant in Kingston. I live at 3 Sterling Street, and I am rent burdened. I pay close to 50% of my income on rent. Professionally, I work as a caseworker for children experiencing foster care, and I work closely with their parents, both their foster parents and birth parents, many of whom are struggling to afford housing at this moment. I'm working personally with multiple clients who are working very hard to try to reunify with their children, but who are unable to, specifically because housing is a barrier for them. So I am here to speak on this issue and to urge the council to advocate for the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act. This is not an issue that we can trust the private sector to resolve. I think that's abundantly clear in this moment, that we need the public sector to fund affordable housing. And I'm also here to advocate for the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act. personally, as a rent burdened tenant, I think this is vitally important, but it's certainly not just me. There are countless individuals in this community who are being priced out so that people who are already wealthy can make more money without working for it. It's very upsetting. I also, like many of the people who have spoken here tonight, I do not think we need another vacancy study in order to determine that we have a housing crisis. It is very clear to anybody who lives in this community that the housing crisis is real, and we don't have time to delay in resolving it. So thank you very much for your time.
Next speaker, please.
Hadley Parham.
Howdy, folks. My name is Hadley Parham. I currently live on Furnace Street in Ward 4. The spring of 2022, I sat in a friend's living room in their one-bedroom apartment when they got a call from their landlord that they would be effective immediately raising their rent by $500, which was over a third of what they were paying at the time. That fall, the unit I was living in over in Ward 2 became rent stabilized when the city of Kingston passed the Emergency Tenant Protection Act. That stability in my rent, $50, a couple $100 a month, was enough for me to decide to go back to school. I attended SUNY New Paltz. I'll graduate this May with my degree to be a math teacher. I look forward to that career. And I know how much it meant to other neighbors in my building and on my block. It made the difference for them being able to raise kids in Kingston, to stay in Kingston when they grew up in the area, and to plan for their future in a way that they didn't expect to otherwise. This city will have years and years of data from tenants like me and my neighbors, from economists and other community experts, from landlords themselves about the intense burden that our housing emergency has placed on our community. It's a shame as well that people and small landlords have been fed the lie that it is lucrative or safe or anything else to make a profit off of selling someone a bed to sleep in. Housing should not exist to make anyone richer or to be a good investment. It should be guaranteed as the necessity that it is for the quality of life for individuals and for the safety of communities. It is to that end because when I was facing an illegal rent increase in my unit in Ward 2, that the Office of Assemblymember Shrestha helped me resist that increase. Those legal protections meant a lot to me and were some of the reason that I ended up joining the Democratic Socialists of America, where I've been able to fight for other cities to show the bravery that the city of Kingston has in fighting for its tenants. It is to that end that I call on you to remember that the city of Kingston has been historic, it has been a leader in this fight. You passed good cause eviction before the state decided that that was preemptive of its own powers. You were, I think, the second city to opt into good cause last year when the state passed that in the state
30
budget.
seconds.
Thank you. And you were, I believe, the first city north of Westchester County to opt into the Emergency Tenant Protection Act. Please continue this bravery and support the state bills for REST and for the Green Social Housing Bill. I'll be very excited to see a future where everyone in this city can afford to live and thrive here.
Next speaker, please.
Chelsea Viaba.
Good evening, Council, and thank you for listening to your constituency this evening. Recently, I've had the great honor and opportunity to speak with many of my neighbors, and many have shared some of their biggest concerns. A large majority of folks have expressed housing concerns, from unsafe living conditions to high unaffordable rates for working people. Too many folks are afraid of their rents going up because they've been subjected to this by property holders using loopholes to push long-term residents out. Support the legislation calling for the state to do something more to plan a future for all of us. I urge you to pass the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act and the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act. Housing is everyone's issue. Children, elders, poor and disabled. Housing is a public safety issue. It's a public health issue, both physical and mental. We're all here because we know the power of local government, especially at a time when tomorrow's federal government is uncertain. Please listen to your neighbors. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Bravin Ranga.
Hello, Council. It's good to be with you this evening. My name is Bravin Ranga. I'm the political director at For the Many. Our office is at 13 Grand Street. Yeah, we're in a housing crisis. I think all of us know that. And addressing that crisis requires bold solutions. The city of Kingston has taken really important steps and made history by being the first upstate municipality to opt in to rent stabilization and the first in the country to win a historic rent reduction. And I applaud your leadership on this issue. The problem is ETPA only covers around 20% of Kingston's rental housing stock. And Kingston has been the only upstate city to successfully opt in to rent stabilization. So we clearly need to reform the statewide rent stabilization laws by passing the REST Act to protect and expand this crucial policy. ETPA was originally written with New York City in mind and only covers buildings of 6 or more units. The REST Act would allow municipalities to choose which sized buildings are covered by the law to tailor it to their specific housing stock. When ETPA was originally passed in 1974, it covered buildings built before that year, but that was 50 years ago. And since then, new buildings have been built, and the tenants who live in them have been arbitrarily excluded from rent stabilization. And the REST Act would reflect the original intent of ETPA by including buildings built 15 years before the current date on a rolling basis. The REST Act would also allow municipalities to use publicly available data to opt in to ETPA instead of a costly vacancy study that costs tens of thousands of dollars and is vulnerable to bad faith lawsuits, as all of us in the city have learned the hard way. The REST Act is a bill that empowers municipalities to take action to address the housing crisis as local elected representatives of the only city that has successfully opted into rent stabilization in upstate New York. Your voices in support of this legislation is absolutely critical. And I urge you to pass the resolution in support. I also call on this council to pass a resolution in support of the Social Housing Development Authority. We need to build more housing, but the answer is not more tax breaks to corporate developers. The answer is to invest in social housing that is truly affordable, publicly owned, and democratically controlled. Finally, I call on you to cancel the
30
scheduled
seconds.
vacancy study this year. There is no statewide mandate that you do this, only a local law that you passed calling on you to do so. Landlords have been preparing for this. They're going to manipulate the data, and that could lead to Kingston losing rent stabilization, which would be catastrophic for tenants that live in the city. I urge you to continue to demonstrate leadership, pass the resolutions, cancel the vacancy study, address the housing crisis. Thank you so much.
Next speaker, please.
Naomi Dan.
Hi, my name is Naomi Dan. I live at 147 O'Neill Street. I'm the Chief of Staff at Housing Justice for All, which is a statewide coalition of tenants and homeless New Yorkers. We fight together for housing as a human right. And as you've heard tonight from a lot of residents, expanding rent stabilization and urging the state to fund social housing are key tools that would help the city of Kingston address the housing crisis. This is a crisis that has meant so many families are having to choose between housing and other essential needs like groceries or childcare, and is forcing them to move farther and farther away from families, from their jobs, or from their schools. Kingston has been a leader in confronting the housing affordability crisis, and that's a testament to the work that you all have done over the last several years. We've also been one of the communities I think hit hardest by the housing affordability crisis, both with rising prices and rising evictions, and also a scarcity of quality affordable housing. But right now, rent stabilization only covers 20% of rental units. Good cause eviction, which we all fought really hard for over the last couple of years, is a critical protection, but it's most useful as a defensive right in court to allow tenants to fight back when they're faced with unfair evictions or egregious rent hikes or retaliation. But it does not mean that the prices of housing are actually going to stay the same all the time or stay affordable. And the zoning reforms that the city has worked really hard on can only go so far to incentivize development because we know that the private sector will never build enough housing at the affordability levels that we actually need. The City of Kingston needs more tools to keep people in their homes and ensure that this remains a place where working families can live and thrive. Both of these state bills would offer the city more tools in order to solve the crisis that we're facing here. I also want to affirm that we do not need a vacancy study to know that we have a housing crisis. I think we're all on the same page here. The vacancy study is both costly and honestly arbitrary. What it measures is not a true measure of the crisis that we're actually facing. We urge you all to join us in calling on the state to expand and strengthen rent stabilization and invest in social housing outside of the private market that will remain affordable for the long term for everyone in our community.
Next speaker, please.
Tristan Shepard.
Hello, Tristan Shepard. I live on 87 3rd Avenue. And I'm also here to speak in support of the resolutions, in support of PASH NY and the REST Act. And I think while there's a lot of overwhelming data that points us in the right direction here, it's also really good to hear from people because a lot of displacement in Kingston and in the United States also happens in a very extra legal way. Or through negotiation. So, for example, I just learned this weekend my neighbor across the street, who's been there for almost a decade, has been asked to leave because of the sale of a house. And of course, that is the landlord's right to do that. And they're probably making quite a bit of money on it. It's pretty rational. But the problem here is that this is happening all the time, and it's not going to be necessarily reported. So in terms of a vacancy study, there are other things to consider here. This is a person who's a single mother, sending her kid off to school. She works for a private bus company that services the local school districts here. And they did find a place, but it's $800 more a month. And something about that just doesn't work, which is why I really do think we need to consider other alternatives to providing housing, rather than just a free market. I mean, in every way, shape, and form, the landlord, who's also a local member of the community, is doing everything that would make sense to them here, but we're still not getting a very humane solution. So that's all.
Next speaker, please.
David Cruz.
Hi, Common Council. My name is David Cruz. I live at 48 3rd Avenue. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I believe housing is a human right. I want diverse and lower income folks to have an equal shot at being able to live in our city and have a feeling of security and safety here, not just an increasingly upper middle class who can afford higher rent rates and rent hikes. I call on you to pass the resolution sponsored by Alderman Hirsch and Tierney in support of the REST Act, which would expand rent stabilization laws to cover more units in Kingston and make it so more upstate cities can opt into these protections, and social housing as well, which would build and maintain affordable and democratically controlled housing. I call on you to cancel the vacancy study as well, scheduled for this year to prevent landlords from manipulating the data and stripping Kingston of rent stabilization protections. Thank you very much for your time.
Two things. That is 30 minutes, but that was also the last speaker signed up. So is there anybody, before I do that, is there anybody who would like to speak? Okay, then Michael, was that a motion to extend another 30 minutes? Second by Drew Andrews. All in favor? Anyone opposed? We have another 30 minutes on the clock, so please come up, just say your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, can you hear me? Great. My name is James Owen Colmany. I live on 264 Clinton Avenue, room number 12. I've lived there since July, and since then I've gotten the pleasure of getting to know many of the residents of Kingston, many of whom do not have stable housing, and for whom the Rent Emergency Stabilization for Tenants Act and the Permanently Affordable Social Housing for New Yorkers Act, the RAST Act, the REST Act, and the PASHNY Act would both be very beneficial for assuring new and permanent housing and not the temporary insecure housing many must live with. From Monica to Kathy to even some of the conflicts they've had with men like Scotty and Dan, there's a lot that insecure housing creates in families, peoples, couples, relationships, and much more. People get nastier when they don't have a place to live and don't have a steady place to live. I wouldn't be surprised if, upon New York's passage of the Rest Act and the Pass and Y Act, domestic violence would go down and much healthfulness achieved socially and interpersonally. I myself pay more than half my rent, have my income in rent, and while I'm a single man, I extend my hand whenever I can to the people who have anyone who has no secure housing, and I would love for a real answer and a real coming together for their welfare. And I think passing resolutions to support the REST Act and the PASS and Y Act will do very well in giving hope and achieving the outcomes of good housing for many people.
Is there anybody else who has not spoke who wishes to speak? Anyone else? Then I will close the public speaking portion of the evening. We now enter into claims and communications. Hearing no discussion, they will be on file in the clerk's office. Can I get a motion to dispense with the second reading of the general bills and pays? Same motion by Rennie Scott Childress, second by Bob Dennison. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is adopted 8-0. We now move to the report of committees, starting with resolution number 48, please.
Resolution 48 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for a 2025 budget transfer of $9,700 in the Health and Wellness Department to be reimbursed by Rubco New York Main Street Grant.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to resolution number 49, please.
Resolution 49 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, authorizing the purchase of 5 parcels on 4th Avenue.
On the question, hearing no discussion, Michael Tierney.
Thank you, President Shaw. I will be voting in favor of this resolution with some trepidation. I believe that this is the right thing to do at this moment because some unscrupulous speculator will buy it if we don't now and sell it to us down the road for a lot more money. But my trepidation about this is not even necessarily these purchases. It's that we're purchasing this for an extremely ambitious housing project at the Kingston Business Park, which could be a huge opportunity for the city of Kingston. But the question that I have continued to ask and continue to not have answered is who will own these housing units? We sit at this crossroads of the opportunity to have a serious discussion about public ownership of these housing units for people who live here, for people who have been displaced, that just haven't been answered yet. We talk about mixed affordability, mixed income, which usually means that there will be a lot of very wealthy people and a couple of almost wealthy people living in these units. And I just have a lot of concerns that this is not the solution to the housing crisis. Will our displaced neighbors living in hotels in Greene County and Ellenville be able to afford to live in this development? Or will it be for people with email jobs? It's just, seems only tangentially relevant now, but I've seen time and time again with so many projects that the city and the county take on that you can only ask these questions right at the beginning, because once it starts to snowball, you can either completely derail it or just go along to get along. And I will be voting yes on this, but I'm very close to voting no on everything in the future if these questions aren't answered on if this will be something that can be publicly owned or a cooperative or a tenant-owned model that is allowed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Michelle Hirsch?
Thank you, Madam President. I will be a no on this. As I said last night in caucus, I do not believe that we should be taking this property on when we don't own the business park at this time, and we are far out from this project. So I'm not in favor of taking these parcels off the tax rolls at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution passes 7-1 with a dissent, Alderwoman Hirsch. Moving to Resolution 50, please.
Resolution 50 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for budget transfers of $35,929.45 in the housing initiatives of unspent private grant funds from the 2024 budget to the 2025 budget.
On the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 51, please.
Resolution 51 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for 2025 budget transfer of $74,193.55 in the wastewater treatment facility to reconcile department accounts.
On the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 52, please.
Resolution 52 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for 2024 budget transfer in the amount of $196,300 in the Police Department's budget to balance accounts.
On the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 53, please.
Resolution 53 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, appreciation and support for Dr. Margaret Carpenter of New Paltz, New York.
On the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 54, please.
Resolution 54 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, referring amendments to the Kingston Forward Form-Based Code for review to the City of Kingston Planning Board, Ulster County Planning Board, and the Historic Landmarks Preservation Commission, and setting a public hearing.
On the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 55, please.
Resolution 55 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for 2025 budget transfer in the amount of $24,912.39 in the Fire Department to close out the 2024 budget.
On the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 56, please.
Resolution 56 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for a 2024 year-end internal budget transfer of $649 in the Parks and Recreation Department to reconcile accounts.
On the question? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 57, please.
Resolution 57 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for a 2024 year-end internal budget transfer of $66,916 in the Department of Public Works to reconcile accounts.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 58, please.
Resolution 58 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for a 2024 year-end internal budget transfer of $17,956 in the Department of Public Works to reconcile accounts.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 59, please.
Resolution 59 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for a 2024 year-end budget transfer in the amount of $11,994,035 to close out 2024 transfers to the capital fund.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution number 60, please.
Resolution 60 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for a 2024 year-end budget transfer in the amount of $728,350 in the City Hall General Fund.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution number 61, please.
Resolution 61 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, recommending approval for a 2024 year-end budget transfer in the City Hall Sewer Fund in the amount of $344,970.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 62, please.
Resolution 62 of 2025, an ordinance amending an ordinance in relation to the traffics of the public streets of the City of Kingston, New York, adding handicap parking on Down Street.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 63, please.
Resolution 63 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, to lower the speed limit on Wirt Street Bridge in Kingston.
On the question, hearing, no. You don't have to.
No, I just want to clarify that this is a request to the state that this is not a piece of legislation where we're in fact lowering the speed limit.
Because we don't have the authority to do so.
Right, because this is a state covered street.
Thank you for that explanation. Anyone else? Hearing no further discussion, I will call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 64, please.
Resolution 64 of 2025, an ordinance amending an ordinance in relation to the traffic on the public streets of the City of Kingston, New York, amending Chapter 390, Vehicles and Traffic of the Code.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. Oh, sorry. Got on a roll there. Alderwoman Hirsch.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to clarify that this resolution makes Prince Street one way only between Garden to Smith, and alternate side of the parking on Prince will be between Garden to Foxhall. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 65, please.
Resolution 65 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, authorizing the removal of the sum of $10,200 vacant building fees from the 2025 general tax bill for 55 Fair Street, SBL 56.108-2-9.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 66, please.
Resolution 66 of 2025. Resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, authorizing the removal of the sum of $6,200 vacant building fees from the 2025 general tax bill for 62 to 64 First Avenue, SBL 56.27-4-22.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 67, please.
Resolution 67 of 2025, resolution of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, determining that the Flatbush and Foxhall Sewer and Drainage Project is a Type 2 action.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. Moving to Resolution 68, please.
Resolution 68 of 2025, a bond ordinance dated April 1st, 2025. An ordinance authorizing the financing of design expenses in connection with the Flatbush and Foxhall Sewer and Drainage Replacement Project in and for the City of Kingston, Ulster County, New York, at a maximum estimated cost of $600,000 and authorizing the issuance of up to $600,000 bonds of said city to pay costs thereof.
On the question, hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted 8-0. We now move to local laws 2 and 3 of 2025. Both of them are their first reading, so there will be no action.
Local Law 2 of 2025 of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, amending Chapter 310 Parks and Recreation.
And local law 3 of 2025.
Local Law 3 of 2025 of the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, amending the administrative code authorizing the deputy comptroller to act generally for and in place of their principal officer, or in the absence or inability of the principal to act, and the comptroller shall have the power and authority to appoint officers and employees therein.
Thank you. That concludes our communications for the evening. Before we conclude the meeting, does anyone have anyone to adjourn in memory of? Alderman Shavit.
I have a couple. First is Michael Bruck. Compared to me, he's a relatively young man. Born in Kingston, was recently living in Tennessee, served for quite a number of years in the U.S. Army, active in local community events here, although he really appreciated spending time with his family more than anything. Leaves behind his father, Jim, and his wife, Rose, along with his wife, 2 daughters, 1 son, 2 brothers, and 2 grandchildren. Second is Bob Aiello. Bob is pretty well known locally. Bob served, I believe, about 28 years on the Ulster County Legislature. Bob was born in Saugerties, had a political science degree, and owned the hair company for many, many years in both Saugerties and Kingston. As I said, he was on the Ulster County Legislature for 28 years. He leaves behind his wife, Chris, a daughter, 2 granddaughters, and a sister and brother. Bob lived pretty well. He suffered recently, and he had a very tough battle towards the end. Sad to see him go like that, but very active member of both our community and Saugerties, as well as the county. Thank you.
Thank you. My condolences. Drew Andrews.
Yeah, I just found out that Jeannie Edwards is caring for her brother, and I just want to send well wishes from us to her and blessings that her brother gets well.
Anyone else? Hearing no one else, that concludes our meeting. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Michelle Hirsch, second by Rennie Scott Childers. All in favor? We are hereby adjourned until the next regularly scheduled meeting on Tuesday, May 6, 2025 at 7:30 p.m. Thank you all.